Hello everyone. So for this video, we're going to talk about the RF21 assemblies and how they're all related. So just a quick overview of the content. First, we're going to go over the assembly tree for RF21. Second, creating a part file / assembly inside an existing assembly. And last one would be referencing to other assemblies. So here you see the assembly tree for RF21 in a simplified form. And here you see at the topmost, you have the RF21 assembly, which has everything in the cart. And then underneath that, you have two main assemblies called the CH chassis and the EV electric powertrain. And then under those main assemblies, you then have sub-assemblies. So for chassis, you have frame, suspension, brakes, controls, and aero. And then for electric powertrain, you have the accumulator, the motor, drivetrain, safety, cooling, and low voltage. And then inside these sub-assemblies, you then have your part files, or in some cases, more sub-assemblies. So why is this important to know? The first reason is to know which assembly you need to rebuild for updates to propagate. So for example, a lot of suspension components are designed in context with the frame master sketch. So now, if I make a change in the frame master sketch, and I want that to update on the suspension, I then need to open the chassis assembly, since that's shared by both the frame and suspension, and then click Rebuild on that. The second reason is if you're doing part design, this allows you to only work on the sub-assembly essential to your part. So this will avoid opening the larger assemblies, which obviously takes longer to load. So for example, if I'm designing control arms, I just need to open the suspension assembly, unless I want to make references to the frame master sketch, for example. And another reason is to know which assembly you need to open in order to see how it integrates with the other sub-assemblies. So obviously we design our systems to integrate well with other systems. So for example, for suspension, I need to be able to see the pickup points on the frame. So in order for me to see both the frame and the suspension assembly, I need to look at it from the chassis assembly. Okay, so the second part is creating a part file / assembly inside an existing assembly. And one of the main key things here is mating of the principal planes. And the purpose for this is so that the origin and the principal planes of the RF21 assembly and all of its components are all the same. So for example, and that's just for consistency. For example, if I'm designing something in the suspension assembly and it's somehow related to the ground plane, I want that ground plane to be the same ground plane as the ones from the other systems. So in order to do this, I'm going to show you in the chassis assembly. So here is the chassis assembly. And if I want to insert a new part or a new assembly inside an assembly, I go on assembly here, click the drop down for insert components. So I can either insert here. So for example, in this case, you have part files and assembly files. I can still insert an assembly inside an assembly. And the same thing goes for parts. But if you don't have your parts made yet, or your assemblies, you can also create the assembly right here. So if I click the drop down and I click new assembly, now this creates like a virtual file. So this is only saved inside the chassis assembly. It's not saved in your folders, in your local folders, right? So here, if I go on chassis, there's nothing here. So first thing I want to do is rename this. Let's say I name it test assembly. Okay, and then for me to save this as an actual file, I right click it, save assembly and external file, and then I specify where I want it to be saved. So in this case, I want it in the chassis folder. I just select that folder. click OK. So now it's an actual assembly file. So if I go on my local folder, you can see now that it's here. Okay, so now how do I make the principal planes? So you kind of want to see the principal planes of the chassis and the principal planes of your new assembly. So to make this, it's pretty simple. You just click, one of the planes, click mate, and then since you want it to be mated to the chassis planes, you click front plane to front plane, have them coincident, check, top plane to essentially that's the ground plane. So you click the ground plane, coincident, check, and then same thing goes for right plane. Okay, so now if I check my top plane, for example, it's right there. And if I go on the chassis, you can see it was pretty much in the same plane. Okay, and the next one is referencing to other assemblies. So what is external referencing? This basically links one file to another through sketch relations. So there's a lot of sketch relations. There's like tangent, equal length, what else? Like coincident and all of that. And there's also something called convert entities, which I will go over later. And the purpose of external referencing is so that you can design subsystem parts based on the master sketch geometry from another part or another assembly. So in the case for, again, in the case for suspension, a lot of these parts, the geometry, are all defined in the frame master sketch. So if I want to copy those sketches, then I want to make references. And external referencing pretty much allows updates in the master sketch geometry to propagate between documents. So how do I do this? So first, to make a sketch reference to other assemblies, you open the shared assembly. And then you view the sketches for both, and then you edit part and create your sketches, which I will go over in a second. And then in terms of sketch relations, you have convert entities, which makes a copy of a sketch, which will update in geometry or position according to any changes to the original sketch, so where it's referenced to. So if now if I go here, as an example, if I want to make a sketch in the suspension assembly, actually, yeah, let me just view the sketches in the frame. So if I go here, edit part, right, and let's say I want to view the sketches. There we go. So now these are the frame master sketch that I was talking about. Yeah, and ignore the errors that you may see here. They're all in the process of being fixed. So yeah, this is the frame master sketch. As you can see, it pretty much has all the suspension geometries, the frame tubes, and all of that. Oops, yeah, now it's just lagging a bit. And so now, if let's say I want to copy this sketch over to my suspension assembly, what I need to do is just make sure that I can see them, right? So yeah, I can see them now. And then if I go on my suspension assembly, oops, I want to edit this assembly inside the assembly. Okay, so right now it's blue. This means I'm only making changes to the suspension assembly while being able to see other assemblies. So right now, rear upper. So okay, let me just hide this so it doesn't get confusing. Okay, so now I'm in the suspension assembly, and let's say I want to make my suspension geo. which has all this, like all these sketches are copied over, or I should say referenced to the frame master sketch. So if let's say I want to make this same thing, I'm just gonna hide it so it doesn't get in the way. So since these sketches are 3D sketch, what I want to do is go on sketch, and then in the drop down you click 3D sketch. So this doesn't restrict you to just one flat plane, because it's 3D. And then the next thing you want to do is, for example, convert entities. So here, for example, I want to copy over the control arms, because let's say I want to design the control arms. Yeah, I just click over that, click the sketches that I want to copy, and then I just click check. So now, as you can see, this sketch is referenced to the frame master sketch, and that symbol is convert entities. So now if I click exit sketch, yeah, click exit. So now here, if I click this 3D sketch, which is inside the suspension assembly, I pretty much have that now here, and it's all referenced. So maybe I should open this. Actually, never mind. So yeah, that's how you make references to other sketches or other assemblies. And the next thing I want to go over is, now how do you want how do you have the changes update? For example, if you make a change in the frame master sketch, how will that propagate to the suspension? So we've actually done this for extending wheelbases and all of that, or changing the geometries for, let's say, your linkage. So for you to do that, first you need to go on your frame master sketch, right? Actually, let me exit the suspension first. Okay, yeah, so like let's say I want to make changes here. Yeah, like let's say I want to increase track width. So if I increase track width here, sorry, not there, axle, there we go. Yeah, like let's say I want to increase track width here. I want to make it, let's say 52, or yeah, let's say I want to make it 52. Then I just change this dimension. So right now I'm in the frame master sketch, right? I change this dimension. And then for my suspension to update, I then need to, change that dimension first, exit the part, open the chassis assembly, which in this case we're already in the chassis assembly, and then click rebuild. Once you click rebuild, and then you open your suspension assembly, everything should propagate properly. And in terms of, we change this guy. Yeah, so I'm just going to go over this quickly. So if you change a sketch on the frame master sketch, in order for the suspension assembly to update, you must open the chassis assembly, which is shared by both the frame and suspension, and then you click rebuild. And how do you check where a sketch is externally referenced to? So for example, if it's been a while since you've created these references and you just forgot it, you can easily go to, for example, suspension. I'm just going to open it by itself. Okay, so here you have your suspension, and here I have my suspension geo, right? So let's say it's been a while, I don't know where they're referenced to. I just right click on the sketch, and I click external references. So here you can see the status is in context. If it says out of context, that means it's not going to update with any changes in the frame master sketch. But if it's in context, everything should be working. So here you can see it's in context to the frame master sketch, since that's where we made the stuff, and this is an example of out of context, right? So if there's any changes in the steering wheel assembly and I try to rebuild it, it's not gonna propagate. So okay, and yeah, that's it for the basics in terms of assemblies and how they're all related. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to message me on Slack and we'll go over it. All right, thanks everyone.